Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 158 of the Peak of Serenity podcast. I am, as always, one of your hosts, Emerson, and joining me, we have my co host, Anamali.
Hello.
And this week, Aberrus is out. The new raid is out, which means not only our own progression begins, which we will be talking about in a minute, but also the Race to World First is on, and it's going faster than expected. Okay? At least
Yes.
faster than I expected.
Yes, it is. It is quick, quick, quick. So
On top of that, there's also all the new Mythic Plus dungeons are out this week, including actually a lot of hotfixes to them, updating visual effects, nerfing bosses, in a couple cases nerfing trash.
yes.
Um, just tons of changes to that. On the one hand, it would be neat if that was done on PTR. On the other hand, I am glad to see them being so responsive. So we'll talk about that as well. And patch 10.1.5 is on the PTR, and there are some big announcements that go with.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk through all that stuff, but let's kick things off with progression. Anomaly, how did your raid week go?
We had a very good raid week. Surprisingly, a really good start to this tier. Which I think is good, is typical for us. Our second tiers are pretty good. But yeah, we went on so we raid Tuesday, Thursday. Tuesday we went 9 of 9 through, or we went 8 of 9 through heroic first. Really nothing too difficult. Sort of cleared like pretty much everything. I think maybe 5 to 6 wipes was sort of like where we hit. Like Echoes was a little bit rough.
Yeah,
Deltharion, we got hit to him on heroic, and then I don't think if there were any other weird wipes. I think that was it. And then did 9 of 9 normal after that, just to sort of clear that up, get some more tier pieces. And so yeah, so we were left with or actually 8 of 9 normal. We got to Sakarath super late. So left us with basically Sakarath on normal, Sakarath on heroic, and then on Thursday we went in and did some mythic. And we got the first 3 down on mythic, which was super surprising. I'll say, like, they're not those first 3 fights. So we did whatever the dragon is first, of course.
Kazara,
Kazara, 2-shot that surprisingly.
nice.
Yeah, which was yeah, we were a little. I think we were a little too aggressive with our portal drops the first pull. I mean, we thought we needed more room,
Yeah,
realizing that like you have plenty of room to just sort of drop portals wherever
yeah.
almost. And then
For a reference point on that, when I was doing healing CD prep for this boss, I saw some 9-minute kills.
yeah.
You can go through this boss for a long time.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think I had planned for like a 7-minute kill, and I think we actually ended up
That's
killing it in like 6 or something,
yeah,
like 602 maybe. Um, but yeah, no, that was, you had a lot more room than we thought. And also the funny thing is on that boss, speaking of healing cooldowns, the 80, 60, 40 like armor breaks, not as dangerous as the knockbacks plus portal combos are later in
yeah,
the fight.
yeah.
Um,
The wings do a ton of damage.
yeah,
Extinction wings or whatever it's called. Extinction.
yeah. So that was sort of rough there. And then we did Zakali Assault next. That one was just throw rocks. Like, it was just getting our team to throw rocks. Um,
I actually have a question for you about that one.
yeah.
Because so on PTR there was this giant yellow arrow over the places to throw rocks. Did they change
Yeah.
that? Is that still there? Is it different now?
So there's no arrow anymore, but there
Okay.
is like a beam of light. Now the thing
Okay.
is, so this is what we learned, just a hot tip here, is that you can throw rocks when there's no beams of light, but like the beams of light have set spawns. So if you're
Yeah.
near a place where it could spawn but isn't, you can still throw your rock
That's
over the
that's
edge and
that's good to
miss.
know because on PTR when we did the testing for this boss, you literally could not throw it unless there was a beam of light.
Yeah,
It was impossible to like waste a rock.
so you can also double up rocks. So if you have
Okay.
2 people throw rocks at the same time, that's also at the same light, it'll eat both of those rocks and use it. I guess the other thing too, maybe this was on PTR, but only guards come up from the lights. So the like little fodder trash, I forget what they're called.
Yeah.
You can't stop them from coming. So it's
Okay.
basically the rocks just prevent guard spawns. And there's always one guard. So you always have enough rocks. You always are one rock short.
Okay.
You always have at least one guard. But once we learned to throw rocks and got guard spawns under control, boss fell over. Final phase is super quick. Um, we got like 2 door slams and the boss was dead.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
also you also lost there, so it was easy. And then we did amalgamation, which was really fun. We did an interesting strat, which I don't know if you guys are doing, but we didn't swap raids, we swapped mobs.
Yeah.
I don't know if
That's
that's
what
the strat
we're
that
gonna do
you're
that too.
planning to.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was made it really easy because then every person on the side is as a partner. So when the mobs spawn, you walk into your partner when you're both healthy, and you clear your debuff that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
We did find out though that no one can chase the mobs to the center. Was sort of we had like 2 wipes to basically some of our DPS wanting to stay on both mobs or just hit the mobs that they run in, and as they hit the middle, there's a tick that goes off and it kills the person because the ticks are like bolstered when
Yeah.
the mobs are close. So we
Yeah.
basically everybody just hung back, stayed to their side, and then killed it. And then final phase pretty easy.
Did
It's
you
just pull
lust
down the
that phase
meters.
or did you lust the first phase?
Yeah, we lusted the start of P2.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
probably about 4 or 5 seconds in once people had all run to where the mob
Yeah.
was. Because
That's what we were looking at. But it was
yeah,
kind of unclear. A lot of people did the like markers in the middle strat where you like put out all 8 markers in the middle and you just have people go through those lanes to clear and swap sides.
yeah.
Um, but I definitely think this strat looks simpler to execute.
It is, yeah, because then everybody has the same partner. So like my partner was always the tank. So like whenever I was healthy, I would run into the tank and clear. And
Mhm.
even if you mess up, like there's always a like you're all self-contained on your side. So it's just like you call it another person that has a debuff.
Yeah.
And the debuffs in the final phase weren't too terrible.
Yeah.
We had like clumps of people. So like melee would just try and clear with each other
Yeah.
as quickly as possible. So but oh yeah, and then we finished that mythic stuff, went back and did normal Sakarath, and then had a handful of pulls on heroic Sakarath before we ran out of time. But no, I will say that I honestly don't dislike any fight. Like even assault being like a typical just like trash fight isn't that bad because you have like there's some moments of really high healing, which is cool, and then like the rock mechanic I think is fun to like interact with. So
Yeah.
um yeah, I think overall nothing too terrible. Other than like I think maybe Magmarax seems a little underwhelming on Mythic. Watching like Limit and Echo
Yeah.
do it, but or Liquid and Echo do it, but
They were doing that. So when we raided on Friday, we actually had just people on an off night do the first 7 on normal,
mhm.
um, and just like get us a 7 of 9 lockout. Then in main raid we did the last 2 on normal, and then went through the first 8 of heroic and put like 5 pulls into Sarkareth on Friday. Um, and then we actually had to break to give out all the loot because we hadn't done it during trash breaks.
Jeez,
Uh, so we just sat there doing loot.
that's awesome.
uh,
That's awesome.
I don't know how I feel about that, but we won't be clearing all those bosses like that for too much longer. So it probably isn't something to think too hard about. But as we were about to pull Magmarax, I don't remember if it was Liquid or Echo was starting Magmarax on Mythic,
Mhm.
and somebody goes, "Holy shit! Have you seen this strat they're doing for Magmarax?"
Yeah,
And we're like, "No." And we go and look at it, and it's just like you put the boss in the corner, and the whole raid participates in soaking every time. On Mythic, your debuffs from soaking are permanent, but they go up to 50.
yeah,
So you could just like do that, and your enrage is the raid hits 50 stacks and everybody dies. Um,
yeah,
so you have to beat that enrage. But on heroic, if you do this, you actually soak the puddles so quickly that their your debuff falls off before the next set of puddles spawn.
yeah,
So it's actually super trivial. So what you do is you put the boss in the corner, you make like a wall with the puddles behind the boss, and then everybody just soaks them, and you go back to DPSing the boss, and that's just like the whole fight. And it is probably like the heroic version of this is probably the mechanically simplest fight that
oh yeah,
we have had to do since like Terra grew.
yeah. I would agree. I think when we talked about all the fights last week in our little preview, I think you had said something that was like going through the fights. Like every fight seems like a 3 mechanic boss. Like there's 3
Yeah,
mechanics you care about, and that's it. And I would agree. Like going through the raid now, like every boss has like 3 mechanics you like care about or have to do, and like I'd
Right.
say yeah, like execution wise, it's not that simple, but like mechanically, like mechanics wise, it's
Yeah.
fairly easy to pick up pretty quickly.
And I overall I like heroic was fun. I had a good time. I think that there are a couple fights where just you can trivialize one of the mechanics, and that makes it like going from a three mechanic fight to a two mechanic fight, right?
Yeah,
Just like is a very dramatic reduction in how difficult or fun these fights are. And that's kind of where Magmarax is when you do this strat, because you just like the soaks all spawn in a like close area around the boss, so you do those. The Armageddon soaks also spawn in a close area around the boss, so you also just like YOLO those. And so you're actually kind of removing two of the mechanics at
yeah,
once. Um and so it's just extremely trivial. It's kind of a one mechanic fight, at least on heroic. Um, but yeah, it's uh, we also had some like Echo of Niltharion was really the first one where we took multiple pulls to really get
hmm
down. We had some very exciting uh, kills on earlier bosses. I was actually dead for the majority of our Rashok kill. Uh, because I messed
nice.
up the taunts on the first tank combo. I taunted like it's the old like two element thing, and you have to split up so that nobody takes two of the same element. Well,
Yeah.
I just like YOLO taunted the second cast. Um which does work if the other taunt goes off, but the timing is actually fast enough that it was still fixated on me from the my taunt by the time the
Oh
second
no.
cast completed. And so I just died. Um
Yeah.
so then they resed me, and I just got like I was just too low. uh didn't have I should have just like hit a cooldown, I guess, but I was just too low and I just died again. And our protection paladin tanked the rest of it with the help
Nice.
of our melee taunting the combo.
Yeah, it's funny. We had one of those. I think actually our amalgamation kill on Mythic was like that. Was like we needed basically like a DPS taunt because we lost the tank.
Yeah.
Um yeah, we had one of the like yeah, but nothing we had nothing too crazy. I mean, I will say like a lot of the fights, like Rashok was really fun to heal on heroic. Um
Oh, we also had two of our healers die on that, so it was basically healed by two resto druids.
nice. Nice. Yeah, Rash I mean, and we got like I don't. Sorry. We also on Rashik, we got two of the healer trinkets, which was really nice
Oh,
on
that's awesome.
heroic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I lucked out, and like my raid leader was like, "Who is this trinket best for?" And I was like, "The LFR version of this trinket is the best trinket for any healer. So like, whoever you think is going to play the most, give it to those two healers."
Yeah.
Like it's like it's one of the most insane trinkets that have been released in a while. That it's that good. Actually, I lied. So at least for monks, the mythic version of the class trinket is better than the LF version of Rashox, but that's
Okay.
the only trinket that beats it.
What a mess.
Yeah. But we got two of them, which was awesome. Zero and normal. And we actually did get a heroic warlock like warlock class trinket. So our warlock is really excited about
Nice.
that. So
We got a normal one, I think.
oh nice. Yeah. But yeah,
So
no, it's loot I mean, loot wise, really good. I think we've gotten two or three, four pieces.
yeah.
Um, which is nice. Zero for our healers, I guess is fair.
We
Um,
actually, so we are doing more gearing of our healers than normal, because basically looking at the fights, looking what the checks are, basically giving the healers loot means that we don't have to five heal certain things, and that makes the DPS
okay.
checks a lot easier. So like Skarn, like at Mythic Skarn, there's a lot of healing to do. If you cannot, not have as many healers, then that just lets you play an extra DPS, and that extra DPS is worth way more
Oh
than
yeah.
one or two DPS tier sets. We also have been giving people like we're putting people either at like a one piece or a three piece bonus right now, so that when we kill heroic Sarkareth, they get their two piece or their four piece.
Right. That's actually a good idea. Yeah. Yeah. We should have done that.
So
Anyway.
when we kill Sarkareth tonight, we should have like 6 4 pieces before we even hand out Sarkareth loot.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, but it's no, it's yeah, loot's been good. I mean, it's fun to go back in. I'd say like it's a lot smoother. I feel like the second tier is always a lot smoother because you
Yeah.
don't have like you're just more geared in general, like
Yep.
relative to the raid. So
Yep.
um but yeah, I guess maybe we'll talk a little bit about so the race reward first is going on. I think we've interjected a couple things, but I just wanted I don't know if you had any I had a couple of highlights I wanted to talk about because I think
Sure. Let's go through it. Yeah.
there was fun stuff. So yeah, so I think we already talked a little about the Magmarock strat, which I think is hilarious that I mean ultimately that's just Blizzard didn't put enough health on the mob, right? Like the fact that like I think it's funny if you look at the enrage timer, like Liquid mentioned this a little bit when I was watching their stream. The enrage timer plus the amount of puddles you get, there's not enough time for everyone to get 50 stacks and die. So if you
Oh.
soak everything, and the only reason that Liquid moves the boss late is because the healing requirement. Like you can't keep people up when you have like 30 or like when you get to like the
Yeah.
40 stack range. It just
Yeah.
becomes too much healing.
I
But
mean,
yeah,
that I so I it feels like maybe then the idea of 50 stacks is you would have some people do more soaking than others, right? Because
yeah,
then you get more stacks. But if you just have everybody soaking and you like split them evenly.
yeah. It's like you never reach the max on anybody, which I thought was hilarious. So yeah, that was the one sort of outlier of like, yeah, being just really like they just messed like again, this is like with any sort of single target boss fight, like Sludge Fist or like Guardian, right? Like you mess up the numbers slightly, whether that's timing or like the mechanic numbers, and it just is a pushover, right? It either
Yeah.
becomes way too hard or it's just like in this case, way too easy. But yeah, Zakarn was fun for both Liquid and Echo. So like Liquid's kill, they found a safe spot, or they which from my understanding has been around since PTR. There are certain spots in the room that never like even if every trap is on, you can still stand there and not
Yeah.
get stacks of the trap.
That's actually
Um
so they that's actually just part of the room's design. Like it's made up of like pentagons, right?
yeah.
And so at the edges of the room, there's these points where there's two adjacent pentagons that have just like they form like a triangle against the edge of the room, and that triangle is safe. And so there's a bunch of these around the room. Um,
Yeah. So both Liquid and Echo, probably from about 20% on with the boss, stood on these little triangles, like in like three or four of them along the edge, and basically killed the mob from there. So yeah, Liquids was really tight and did that. And then when Echo did it, they ended up losing everyone. So everyone but Roger, so Hunter, he turtles and runs to the center of the room to pull the mob away, and then their one of their shaman onks, and as the boss is running back, it dies. But the funny thing is, if you look at it in slow mo, two of the golems are actually resetting. So like everyone was dead for like half a second, and then the then the shaman gets up, but the boss hadn't reset
oh my
yet.
god, that's
And
amazing.
then the shaman dies too, actually, but they still get the kill. So if you have a chance, like look back on Echo's like Zakarn kill because it's like hilarious, like how
Yeah,
close it is.
yeah,
Um, and then yeah, I think Echo watching them do Notharian was interesting. I was joking with my guild. I'm like, I can't wait to do this fight where the big red circles are about 75% smaller. Because like right now, like the amount of like
they
the geometry of it, it's like you have a 3 yard sliver to stand.
yeah. So they changed it. It's no longer a line of sight mechanic. It used to be a line of sight mechanic, so it just required you to like make space so that people go out and around a wall. And
Yep.
honestly, like, I think that version was better. I think that people
Yeah.
complained about it being a line of sight mechanic, which just line of sight mechanics have a really bad history of being frustrating to deal with. Like we talked about it on this podcast.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
I think that version was better than this. Um,
I would agree. Yeah, but this is like it's a whole geometry thing now. So there's this.
yeah,
I mean, in the fight, you cannot break walls, and there's still enough space that all 5 of these people with bombs can like get far enough away. But it
yeah,
honestly leaves like a 2 yard little point that you the whole rest of the raid can stand and not get blown up.
yeah.
Um, but yeah,
The
that was funny.
the
So
on heroic on that fight actually. So we were looking at two different strats before the raid released for how we handle positioning in phase one. One of them was this was on the method guide where you put everybody in the middle, break the
mhm.
walls to the outside, and you move the boss out there and drop the fissure there, and then come back into the that strat has two problems. One, the timing on getting the boss out there for the fissure is fairly tight. It's only a few seconds. And so like Monk Speed Taunt, very good for it. We have a Brewmaster right now, so that's doable. The second issue though is that the Shatter Dot really hurts a lot.
Oh yeah.
So if you have people
Yes.
in the middle, then the Rushing Darknesses always break wall segments. And you always, the minimum number of shatter stacks you're getting is 4. Because you get 3 from Rushing Darkness and 1 from the tank mechanic. And
Mm.
it's just a lot of damage. It's really just a lot of damage. So the other strat that we were looking at is the Around the World strat, where you start on the outside of the room and you just like you're in a segment, you put the Rushing Darknesses into the wall, and you put the tank one through the wall segments to break it to make room for the raid to exit out of where the fissure is going to spawn. And that's ultimately what we did because of how badly that shatter mechanic. Holy crap.
Yeah. Yeah. Our first pull, we broke walls and we were not prepared as healers for the amount of
Yeah. Yeah.
time.
So and then we had
No.
a couple of just like we broke like our wipes on the later phases were oops, we broke too many walls.
Yeah.
That's the main thing that was wiping us. There was like we had discussed our phase 3 positioning like last week before release. And so we had decided on one thing, and apparently on normal they did a different thing. I had missed it because I was actually like busy with my brother got married this weekend, so I was busy with family
Gotcha.
stuff and was late to raid on Friday. But apparently they had done something different on normal, and I didn't realize it. So we got to phase 3 on our first pull of Echo of Neltharion, and I pulled the boss into the center, and then they're like, "Wait, what the fuck is going on?" And then we all die to shattering like 10 walls.
Yeah. So funny. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, and that's actually another boss where we like it was down to the wire. We had both tanks die to ads, and we just like had ranged running around killing the boss from 1%.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's definitely an interesting one to watch Prague. Or at least like yeah, Liquid and Echo. And then yeah, Sarkarath Mythic, they're pulling as we speak.
Yep.
I haven't been able to watch much of it, but
Echo is currently in the lead. They have
nice.
gotten into phase 2. I don't think they've gotten into phase 3 yet. Um,
Yeah.
Liquid kind of getting shafted because Echo of Neltharion respawned.
Oh, really? I didn't notice that. That's nice.
So they had to get a GM to intervene and despawn the boss. And then they went. I think they are back to pulling it now. But yeah,
Gotcha.
they had a like 20-30 minutes where they just like we went and did keys because the boss was respawned.
That's
Um,
hilarious.
did you see, by
I
the
love those.
way? Did you see the liquid weak aura for phase 3 of Echo of
I
Neltharion?
did. The old BDG Weekora that came
So,
back.
oh yeah.
Map.
So in last year on Broodkeeper Diurna, there was this neat map we for doing egg breaks that I don't think was actually particularly useful
Yeah,
because
no.
um you just like you map it all out and it's actually not that complicated to keep track of where you are.
Yeah.
So it's just like not that hard. The map we core was overkill and I think distracting more than it was helpful, but it was cool technology. It was basically you have the if you've ever pushed like Shift M in game, you get the like small version of the zone map. And so for a boss room, that's just the boss room. And so importantly, it has the player's exact location as an arrow on it.
Yep.
So what they do is they actually hide the map. Pull it up, you set the transparency to 0 or 100, however you want to phrase it. Like you
Yeah.
hide the actual map background. And they've got a hexagonal grid overlaid over it. It's just like a an image overlaid over it.
Yeah.
And you can I think this is how, I obviously don't have access to the weak but I think this is how it works. You can deterministically control which wall segments turn into portals in phase 3 of Neltharion by controlling the boss positioning. So I think they mapped that out and then assigned everybody to a particular portal that would spawn for each
Hmm.
of the like breaks that happen. And then the weak aura just shows you exactly where you need to go, and you can walk over to it and stand in it. And it's just like this is the BDGG tech,
Yeah.
but applied to a mechanic that is much harder and more deserving of this kind of weak aura. So that's very cool. I expect that that will be part of like when progression ends. They always publish all their weak. I expect that'll be part of it. That is something we are going to be stealing for sure.
Yeah, no. Yeah. I will say that hopefully there was a couple of inconsistencies when they were doing it. Where like there it's not always the same portals every time. And it's
Okay.
like apparently it's like very like the boss to be maybe in a very specific spot
Yeah.
where to force it. But the nice part is like the difference is like not like one on one side of the map and another one on the other side of the map. It's like two right next to each other what they were
Right.
talking about. Like so like it's a minor difference just so people get there. But yeah, that was it was a really cool to see that weak in action. Reminded me of the Archimond radar weak
Yeah.
aura.
Yeah.
Um which like if you don't remember that one, but Archimon back in God, what was that? Kata? MOP?
No, that
Back
was in WAD. That was
oh
the last
WAD,
boss
okay.
in HFC. Yeah.
Well off in WAD. He had a mechanic where he'd shoot lasers between two people. So you got paired up with someone, and but the entire raid had it happen on Mythic, I guess the Mythic version of it. I don't think they had Mythic just yet. Um and so there was a radar weaker that would show the line of you and every other player around you. So you basically just stood where there were no lines and like made it super easy to put together. But yeah.
Yeah. And that's the
No,
kind
yeah,
of
it's
thing
cool.
you
But
can't do that anymore.
right, yeah, that's no longer
Like
allowed.
adding the lines and things, but like this is just like it's a neat on a tech level, just like how they take the things that you are allowed to do. Like you're allowed to show the mini map. You're allowed to like see the player's position on the mini map. You're
Mhm.
allowed to overlay just a static image. And so
Yep.
like that's just you combine those three things and you can build this cool little like radar style week.
Yeah. Yeah, that was yeah, some really that was I think that's really the only super interesting week aura so far that I saw from the raid. Um yeah, there they do have I guess the other thing too with Echo of Netharian, the debuff is one of the new protected debuffs. So the debuff that has a big circle around it
Right.
is one of the new protected ones. So what they've done is they basically list out all the players who are eligible targets in like a list, and then where you go is dependent on how high you are on that list. So like if you're first on the list, you're always number one. And I guess the way that Liquid is, they always assign the number one person to go somewhere. And if you're second to get it, you go to the number two position. And then like three, four, or five,
Oh, and
five
then
people
they
get it.
like
So
interest.
it's random who gets it, but like you can look at like everybody has the weak aura, so you can look at that list and say, okay, I'm the third person down, so I go to the three spot. But maybe
Okay.
next time I'm the fourth person down, so I go to the fourth spot.
Yeah.
Because the list of names is static, but who gets the debuff is
Right.
dynamic.
And you can't
Um,
use a weak aura to like assign it, but you can have this
so
list and just go like, okay, here's the people that I see with
yeah,
it.
have the debuff. Yeah, yeah,
That seems kind of hard to do in practice. Not gonna lie.
yeah. No, it's. I mean, they had. I mean, they have like Max calling out numbers for them, right? So
Right.
like they have someone doing it. I think Echo. They were just basically like own your spot, right?
Yeah.
Like move early and like own your spot.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, that was the other interesting thing to see is like yeah, the protected stuff was or the first shot at seeing how they handled that was cool. So yeah, I think that's it from Race for World First. It's a very quick tier. I think right now they're at like a total of like 100, 150, 160 total wipes on all the bosses,
Yeah.
which at this point like there were 200 pull bosses in like Sepulcher um
Yeah.
before this. So and even last raid there was a handful like of some high pull bosses. So um
Yeah. I think the one like high pull count boss so far has been Echo of Niltharion.
yeah,
Even Skarn for the top guilds was only like 30 to 40 wipes.
yeah,
Magmarax was 10 to 15. Um,
yeah,
and then the ones before that, just none of the ones in the first five took them more than like. Oh, actually, Rashok did. Rashok took more,
yeah,
but like it was not a super high pull count boss. Again,
yeah.
they spent like the first 2 3 days doing splits, and
I mean Yeah, I think they walked in, both Echo and Lemon walked in over 230 average idle level, like 231, 232, I think was
You
what,
mean 430? Yeah,
or 430, sorry, yeah.
they are currently Liquid is currently eye level 436 on Starcraft. I have done, no joke, like 25 keys so far this week on my monk, and I am still only eye level like 420 because I just have not had stuff drop. Um, but
Yeah.
that'll, at some point I'll actually get loot.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, maybe we transition into our Mythic Plus forays from this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
One more final just tidbit of information before we leave the race forward first. I did hear through the grapevine that Liquid killed heroic Sakura 32 times this week, which is just an absolutely ridiculous number.
Yeah,
But I think Liquid went a little bit harder this tier on splits than they have in the past. So
yeah, yeah.
but yeah, Mythic Plus. I mean, I think we mentioned this at the start. There have been a ton of Mythic Plus hotfixes. Like I think, we have seen, so I'll say at least in my experience, I luckily didn't start doing Mythic Plus. I did like I think 2 dungeons on Wednesday. But I'd raid Tuesday, Thursday. So I didn't get a ton of Mythic Plus time. And I did the
Yeah.
easy ones. I did like Freehold and what was the other one I did? Um
Ultima?
yes, actually you're right, Oldemon, yeah.
You
I
said
did
easy
those
ones,
two.
so
Yeah, yeah. So I did those two on Wednesday. Didn't do any Thursday, and then did a bunch, yeah, last night and then Saturday night or Friday night, Saturday night. So I missed the really tough ones, but Blizzard did a number on on nerfs. I think like the big ones, at least that I had always heard that were bad, were when Neltharian's Lair,
yes, that one was
particularly
bad.
like the worm and even the last boss being
Yeah,
very difficult. So that those caught a bunch of nerfs in terms of damage. Brackenhide caught a bunch of changes
yep.
in terms of like damage reductions across the board.
As well
I
as
did
visual improvements.
Oh really? I didn't
Yeah,
I didn't hear that.
yeah. So there's a number of mechanics in there that got just improved, like borders on the mechanic that you're not supposed to stand in and things like that. Like it's nothing like insane, but it just makes it easier to like not stand in the whirlwind on the first pass and things like that. There's actually a
Gotcha,
number of
gotcha.
these. They improve the visuals in Freehold too. Like the bruise on the second boss in Freehold got an improved visual. You can see them more easily. The backhand, I think this was actually something that was added on. The backhand uh, frontal on the trash mobs, the enforcer trash mobs, has a
Hmm.
real visual now. You no longer have to just guess if you're in
Oh,
it.
okay.
Um,
Nice. That's good.
and just like, oh, the swirling blades from the last boss from Harlan Sweet is significantly easier to see now. That's also something from PTR. That mechanic got some adjustments, but it was just that mechanic in BFA was just not possible to really see. You just had to know where it was going to be.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. That's nice. Yeah. Okay, cool. I didn't know about all the visual stuff, but I did hear, yeah, about all the nerfs. And I think honestly, I didn't see anything for Oldemon or for
Actually,
um what did the Oldemon get some nerfs too?
it got some buffs.
Oh, some buff. Well then, fair enough.
They reduced the timers on, I think, Underrot and Ultron.
Okay. Gotcha. Yes, 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 yes.
So yeah, because those were just too easy. They're like they
That
commented
makes
on like
sense.
Shadow Moon Burial Ground being an outlier that was too easy last year, and so it created this kind of situation where people just wanted to do Shadow Moon because it was easy, right? So
Right.
you
Yeah.
did a lot of Shadow Moon. It was easy to get into a Shadow Moon key because you could just take anybody into the key and time it. Um, they want to avoid like super large disparity and having keys that are just too easy at a time.
Hmm.
Um, Underrot is one of the easier ones to complete, and so is Ultimon. Like they are both fairly straightforward to complete.
Yeah.
Timing them is now a little bit harder. It took like 3 minutes off the timer.
That makes sense because I had a 21 death, 16 Ultimon and still timed it. So, I mean, we one just did it. We didn't do anything crazy,
Yeah,
but yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, nice. Yeah, but no, I've done at this point, I've done every dungeon on Mythic Plus, at least at a 16. So it's been the sort of the goal, and I'll say that there are a couple of bosses healing wise that are a little intense still. The first boss of Brackenhide, particularly with the bleed, is really rough. Um,
Yeah.
as a monk. So I mean, I'd say like you need to sort of be sure you're ready for it. The last boss of Natharian's Lair is absolutely insane from a healing perspective. There is so much healing that if you go past like the second AoE thing where you have to hide, if you get a third geyser, I don't think you can survive it on like anything above a 16 or
That's
17
one
at
of
this
the
point.
nerfs, right? They made it so the geysers eventually despawn.
Oh, did they? Okay, so you only ever have two up then?
Yeah, you only have two up at a
Okay.
time.
Okay, then that's I mean,
It's
still
still a
absolutely
lot.
hard. Yeah,
It's
still
still a
absolutely
lot.
hard. But yeah. Um, but yeah, no, I think overall I've actually had a surprising amount of fun. Like Brackenhide going in, I was very worried about, but other than the first boss, I think the rest of them are pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
I think the tree rock guy, you just have to have an order for your soaks, right? Making sure that
Yeah.
everybody knows you only get one at a time.
You can
But no.
also not soak, which is definitely not a general purpose strategy because it gives the boss a 150% physical damage buff.
Yes.
Um, Brewmaster can do that. You cannot
Interesting.
soak, which means that you have to do less damage because there's no shield to burn off.
Hmm.
And then the limiting factor is just like, can your tank survive it? So on my DK, I did not like we did not do that. We just did the damage. I was concerned about getting one shot by auto attacks, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Brewmaster, we just like I didn't. Nobody soaked, just didn't soak,
That's
and I just tanked it.
nice. Nice. Yeah, I will say, Megaset or Meg from Peak has put together, it's pinned in one of the channels, like a cooldown list. So for basically for every Mythic Plus boss, she's put together like at least what she's using in terms of cooldowns for each one of the like the major damage
Ah,
events on every boss for every dungeon. So
nice.
like if you don't know what to use when or how, definitely check that out. I'll say that that helped me with the Brackenhide stuff for the first boss at least.
Yeah,
Um, but no, it was that's out there. But yeah, Mythic Plus, I mean it's fine. Like I'll continue to get like KSM right, and maybe we'll push a
yeah.
little bit beyond that. But um, yeah, at this point, the 60, it's always fun to pug a lot of these because like some people, you just wonder like how they tie their shoes in the morning. Like they have zero like awareness of what's going on, and then they're like, I don't know, I died. So
Yeah,
oh, but I didn't want to talk. Oh, so one thing, did you do Vortex Pinnacle like when it was current in Kata?
yeah,
Did you play?
yeah.
Okay, I also did it, and I thought I knew every mechanic, and
They
I was
changed the
very confused.
bosses. Yeah,
Well, the first boss had orbs, and I was like, "What?" So it had two things. It had orbs and it had like a dead zone underneath of it, like directly underneath of it. You couldn't
yeah,
stand in. Those are new. Didn't realize that.
yep,
The dragon wind boss has like you have to pop up over a thing that I didn't remember, like a circle that expands. You got to like
yeah.
hit a
That's
tornado
new.
to pop yourself up. Yeah, didn't thought for. I
Yeah,
was like, I don't
anything
remember
you
that at
look at
all.
those and you're like, I didn't remember that. It's
Yeah,
probably new. They add like
yeah.
I did Vortex Pinnacle on PTR before they did any of these changes, and
Hmm.
like my feedback on every boss was just like, where are the mechanics? Like just
Yeah,
genuinely, where are the mechanics? Because the old version of the first boss, you just like did the like windshield mechanic, and that's the only thing that it did. Just did that,
yeah.
and you just killed it. It was just like a patchwork. Uh, that's it. Wind boss again, patchwork. You just like stay in the good side of the winds, and you just burn the boss. Third boss, or sorry, the is it three boss or four boss?
I think there's only three,
I think it's
but
only
I
three.
honestly I only remember the first guy with the tornadoes in and out, the
Yeah,
second guy's the wind dragon, and then
yeah,
the third guy's the last boss at the end with like the
yeah.
triangle you gotta stand under.
So that obviously was there, but there's also those. It used to be that there were a bunch of small stars that you had to like kill, and they were
Mhm.
doing a lot of damage on PTR. Actually, they were doing it, and I think those got changed to be like one big star instead of a bunch of
There
small
yeah.
stars.
Yeah, there's one big star you have to DPS now, and it also has like the jump mechanic where like the boss does like a root and a bunch of damage, but if you jump, you dodge it,
Yeah,
which is cool. But yeah, I also forgot about the trash with like the triangle that you have to hide under.
yes,
So
the
I
misdirection
100%
triangles.
100% died to that. Like getting just basically pounded by one of the mobs. So
Yeah.
Not very good on my part. But no, Mythic Plus, I mean, it's been fun. Um, Nothing really crazy. Like all the dungeons, I don't know, for whatever reason, don't seem as hard, I'll say. Like even Halls of Infusion, which haven't done since like Mythic, Mythic Zero week, was a lot easier than I thought it would be. I was worried about the frog boss actually.
Yeah.
And like a lot of the damage there. And even the last boss, doing the mechanics was fun because like Mythic Zero is like you
You
just
just
kill
kill it.
everything and like
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah.
There's a couple of interesting things about Halls of Infusion. So one, on the frog boss as a brewmaster, while he's casting his like consume thing, you
Hmm.
need to have a player in that or he gains a 50% damage buff. You don't want there to be that damage buff. So you want to stand in it, and so you want your tank probably to stand in it. As a brewmaster, you can stack up your dodge to guarantee that you dodge it.
Oh, very
It
cool.
doesn't
Very
give him
cool.
the buff, but also you don't get consumed. Um,
Gotcha. Interesting. Interesting.
and then also on that boss, he will consume any frogs that are in the circle. Oh, that
Hmm.
is like the best way to get rid of those stupid frogs.
Yeah.
So like
That's sorry.
if you can consume like 80% of them with that and just like finish off the last one or two, that is just like so much easier.
Yeah, luckily the group that I did that with knew about that part of the mechanic or maybe remembered it. So yeah, we that's how we basically killed I'd say yeah, like 90% of the frogs were with consume in there.
And then the gauntlet area at the end of the dungeon, they changed it. I know a bunch of people on Mythic Zero were doing this thing where you would run, like your tank would run to the end, pull everything, jump off, and get pulled. Like it puts you in the bubble and
Yeah.
back at the start of the gauntlet. Have all the trash come back and they do it where you're not facing any of these stupid water tornadoes.
Yeah.
They not only fixed that. I mean, obviously it's harder to do that on a key, right? But
Yeah.
they also made it so the trash will reset if you try and pull it out of the gauntlet. So you can't even like the first bag I actually had this happen. I got storming out
Interesting.
of the gauntlet, and the trash pack
Oh.
reset.
Interesting. Interesting. Interesting.
Not my only storming reset the pole instance this week too. It's really annoying. Storming is a bad mechanic. Please.
Yeah, I hate storming has been fun to deal with a lot of like particularly with any new dungeon where you don't know all the different like visuals on the ground,
Yeah,
like knowing what's super dangerous and what isn't. So
yeah. I had one today, so we were doing freehold, and it's like the enforcer plus some nearby trash at the start of the bridge after the first boss,
mhm.
right? And
Yep.
so I move out of storming, and I just like I don't know what I stepped on, but it was apparently like no path available, and I got snapped back into the trash into the backhand frontal,
Oh no.
which then resulted in me getting hit by that. Then I got hit by storming, the thing that I had been trying to avoid in the first place, and then I died.
Oh god. Yeah, that's rough. That's rough.
Thankfully,
Yeah.
like the pack was almost dead, so they just killed it. But it was still like
Yeah, there's a free
annoying.
it's funny. Freehold is weirdly like I find it that the area to the first boss is weirdly annoying. Like it's weirdly difficult when compared to the rest of the dungeon for some reason. Like I don't know what it
the
is.
I
It's
feel
like
like
the bird stuff and then like the mobs themselves are just
yeah,
annoying.
the bellows that the enforcers do are really dangerous.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm not looking forward to those next week on Fortified. Also
No.
the orbs in Halls of Infusion are going to be a nightmare on Fortified. Oh my god.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Shoot. Yeah. Maybe you just don't do keys. Maybe a KSM just from like radical weeks. Um,
um, on the other
but yeah, no,
hand,
it's
the
been
bosses will be easy. So
that's true. That's true. Yeah. But no, it's been I mean, Mythic Plus, I actually like all the dungeons. I like the change in terms of like new dungeons and then like no
yes,
seasonal affects to figure out. Like
I think that's good.
solid, yeah, solid change, solid change. And it's cool that they're bringing back Vortex Pinnacle and like some really old stuff, which
Yeah.
um definitely died to being like not knowing what to do. Like, just, like,
Yeah.
going back in my mind and be like, "I know Vortex Pinnacle. I did this when it was current content. This should be a joke." And then, like, literally dying to the first boss to the void zone underneath him because I just, like, rolled in and was like, "I'll be fine." And, like, 2 ticks of it killed me. I'm like, "I'm not fine. Like,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
bad." So,
Um,
um,
yeah. It is funny
uh,
Underrot being just like one of the easier ones. It is actually really wild doing that dungeon now with all of the tank changes that we have had since BFA.
mhm.
Like that first boss in BFA was just such a check because you had to get all of the kicks that your tank just got murdered because your tank couldn't do anything about the blood bolts.
Right.
Like Front Warrior could spell reflect one like every 45 seconds or something ridiculous. Um, and that's it. You just like that's it. You didn't have anything else. Um, meanwhile, nowadays it's just like I have cooldowns for days. I have Celestial Brew. I have
Uh-huh.
it puts a healing absorb on you, and I can just expel harm it off. In ways that like you really couldn't in BFA because it just didn't do enough damage outside of those. You generate Gift of the Ox orbs, but now it still doesn't. But we have passive generation of them from a talent.
Yeah.
Just like the difference in power level of tanks is insane,
Yeah.
and really highlights how bad tanks were in just incredibly weak.
Yeah. No, yeah, it was fun going yeah, it was fun doing that because most of my memories of doing, Under Route were with the, like, the portal,
Yeah,
like, the Nyalotha ones, 'cause that's, like, the last time we were in there. So it
yeah,
was interesting having to, like, do it the normal way and not skipping, like, doing your typical skips, like,
yeah,
from one
yeah,
part to the other. Definitely face pulled in the group I was in, we definitely face pulled, like, 2 extra worms, which, at least in my mind, were much more dangerous at BFA, but, like, now they seem
yeah.
not too bad.
They've got a new cast, which if you haven't done it, definitely save a kick for echoing whatever I don't remember Dark Echoes.
Yeah.
Um, because that thing will destroy your group if you do not kick it. Like letting
Yeah.
it's a one of those things where it casts and then it channels. If you kick the cast, that's great. If it gets a tick off, that hurts. If it gets the full channel off, you're probably wiping.
Right, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, they also like there is the if you did this in BFA, there was the whole like sneaky route for like getting around all the trash at the end. So you'd hit like 90% trash and then sneak around everything and kill a couple of worms and the two guys at the end and just like
Yeah.
be done. Um, changes to aggro radius mean you can no longer do that. Uh,
You have to pull that one big pack. You can still kinda do it, but, like,
yeah,
the if you go to the right like, the I guess the other old route was, like, the right side, you kill that one worm right at the bottom, and
yeah,
then you can sneak over that platform that had a bunch of, like, the undead skeletons and the
yeah,
one guy in the center. You have to pull that now.
yeah.
Um,
Without a shroud, right? Like if you
yeah,
shroud
well,
it, you
yeah, if
can
you have
still
shroud,
skip it. But
yeah.
we've been pulling it, and honestly, like those skeleton packs were super scary in BFA.
Very easy.
They're not scary now. And again,
Didn't
just tank
notice.
power level difference because that was what they were pressuring in BFA was just like this is going to murder the tank. Well,
Yeah.
tanks are more powerful now. Tanks are better now. So those are just significantly less scary, and so it's just like fun.
Yeah. 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 No, but yeah, I mean, Mythic, yeah, it's been fun to go back to some of these dungeons. Remembering all the old strats, like even the last boss of Underrot, the whole stack on the tank and like force the frontal and all the orbs in a certain way to like slowly move together.
Yeah.
Um, had one group that didn't realize that was how you did it, and another group that did, and one group it was a little more difficult than the other one. In the two
Shocker.
Underrots that I did, yeah.
Shocker.
But no, it's yeah, it's I think it's always fun to go back to that stuff, and especially when Blizzard like buffs it to be current content, right? Versus like going back just to run through it. So
Yeah.
um but cool. Anything else on the Mythic Plus front other than, tons of nerfs and it's a fun thing.
One note, they did a round of updating count requirements at the end of PTR and actually last week after everything was live, but before the dungeons were open.
Okay.
And MDT is not 100% updated for them. Like Nagi's in a world first guild, right? Like they're kind of busy right now. So we ran
Gotcha.
into this in Freehold where the count in MDT was just slightly off. and that meant that our route was under percent.
Oh
So we
no.
got to the end and we were like, oh, we're 3% off. What did we miss? It turns out we didn't miss anything. The count requirement changed, and MDT was telling us that we were perfect, when in fact we were missing like 20 count, not 20. So we ended up pulling a pack at the end to get the last 3%. But be aware of that. It should like it'll be updated soon, but just
Yeah.
be aware that the count requirements did get changed. And that also means that for these old dungeons, your BFA era route probably no longer works, both because of the count changes, but also because of changes to like mob aggro radius.
Oh, okay,
Because
okay.
like again, going back to that underrot thing where you could just walk around stuff, you can't do that anymore. So you like, well, you basically have to pull that now. That means that other things that you used to pull that were extra, like I used to do this stuff where I would pull like the entire area between the first and second boss and
Hmm.
just do all of the stuff in there basically, and then skip everything after the third boss. And you just don't do that now because
Yeah,
you,
yeah,
I mean, you could shroud it, I guess, and skip a bunch of the stuff that we're pulling over there because it's not super time efficient to like kill a worm by itself.
yeah, exactly,
But
exactly.
if you're not doing that, then you just have to do it slightly different. Just
Yeah,
be aware of that.
cool. Well, cool. Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I think in general, like the overall content that's come out, like all the new raid, all the new Mythic Plus stuff, it's been a ton of fun to like jump back into it. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have,
agree.
for me, I've played zero Destiny 2 this week, and I've only played WoW. So it's pulled me back in, we'll say, to that. So, well, cool. I think, we did a little bit of a reverse order today. So we started with the whole raid stuff, all the Mythic Plus stuff, all the new content. So we'll circle back a little bit into some news for the week now. Um, and so first up is one thing I wanted to highlight is an interesting change to Blizzard that I don't know if I agree with, but we'll see what the thoughts are. Is they have changed the Highland Drake embodiment of the Hellforged, which was a dragon riding manuscript, very much like Razgeth dropped. Um, but it basically changes your dragon riding mount to look like, I believe it's the first boss of the raid.
Yeah, it looks
So
like
like a
Azara.
red
Yeah,
armored, yeah, dragon. This previously was a mythic only drop, so very similar to some of the other, mythic only mounts that had come out. Blizzard changed it though, to be a very low. So I guess two things. Number one, mythic always guarantees two that drop. So always get two, very much like every other mythic mount drop that has happened before. I guess other than Razgath, but
right.
previous tiers. Um, but then also added it to be a very low drop chance from every other difficulty. So you could get it in LFR, get it in normal, or you get it in heroic. Which I think is absolute BS. I think this is the stupidest change like the Blizzard ever made. Like I get it, it's a mount, it's a cosmetic, doesn't matter too much in the grand scheme of things. It's not a power increase, anything like that. But to me, it's like having a mount from a mythic encounter means you put in work to get something. And I think the fact of the matter is that I've watched Twitter scroll through and seen, I'm going to say hundreds, I'm exaggerating, it's probably like 20 or so posts of people getting them out from like lower difficulties. And it's
Yeah,
just like, to me, it cheapens it a little bit. Like I will still care when I get it. But like at the end of the day, I'm like, I'm going to see somebody else have and be like, you did absolutely nothing to get this. Like you got lucky. Like
I mean,
you hit the
I
lottery.
this is the way I wish the Razageth like Drake writing manuscript had worked. That one, for those that weren't familiar, was just a low drop chance from every difficulty.
Hmm.
Mythic didn't guarantee one, didn't guarantee two, just didn't guarantee any. And we have people that we're probably going to end up doing like Vault of the Incarnate skip runs for people to get their Drake writing manuscript from Vault of the Incarnates um, at some point this expansion, because not everybody got it because it's just not guaranteed.
Hmm.
Um, so this is how I wish that one would have worked. In my mind, I don't mind the kind of mythic mount being available at a low drop rate on lower difficulties. In some sense, this is just accelerating the thing where like it after an expansion ends, the mythic mount becomes a low drop rate. and you can go solo it, try and get it. Like it's just instead of having to wait for the ability to solo it, now you can go, and while it's current, you can go and you can do the raid on normal, on heroic, even on LFR, and have a chance at getting them out. And that encourages you to actually get in there and do those bosses. The harder, like Sarkareth is a significant step up in difficulty other heroic bosses, right? Like just like giving you a further incentive to go in and bug that, go and do that. I
Mm-hmm.
think is fine. I'm not like I'm not really frustrated by it. I was more frustrated by the way the Razageth manuscript worked than by this by a lot. Um, I wouldn't personally mind if we only got them from Mythic. But you know, the guaranteed two from Mythic is just like I'm as long as we get our guaranteed two from Mythic and we can get those as a guild and we can work through getting them for people in our roster and everything. As long as we can do that, like I'm fine with it dropping from. It doesn't bother me.
Okay, fair enough. I don't know. For me, it's just it's like I think it's probably affects me more just because I only not that I only raid to do this, but like for me the reward for finishing the raid to me is the mount.
Yeah.
Like it's like so like for me like I'm not a big collector of anything other
Yeah.
than raid mounts. Like
Yeah.
all of my favorite mounts, like when I go back to the old world and like
I
load
use
up and jump on a
my
ramp,
yeah.
it's all raid mounts. It's
Yeah.
nothing other than that. So like
And I
yeah.
mean, like, I'm the same way. I have either the Jailer mount or the Sylvanas mount or the Zoth mount on just like all of my characters is what I use in the old.
Yeah.
Um, the other kind of angle of this for me is that we do mount sales. Like we get our raid their
Mm.
mounts, and then we do mount sales. And in a very literal sense, like if you clear heroic Sarkareth in a group and you're just like participating in the kill, you did more to get that mount than someone that buys the mythic kill. Because a
Mm,
lot of those people that
mm,
are buying the mythic kill are buying gold with WoW tokens.
that's fair.
They are literally just paying for it with IRL money through Blizzard's store.
That's fair.
And
That's
so
fair.
like in some sense this is like making it accessible to people that aren't willing to drop close to $1,000 on Blizzard tokens.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I get it. It's just but then like that takes money out of my guild's pocket, right?
I
If
don't
you get
think
it
like
early.
we're not. I don't think that this will materially affect our ability to do mount sales, right? Like
Yeah, no,
unless this low drop rate is not actually very low, um,
yeah.
then I don't think it'll really impact our ability to get mount sales because being able to guarantee it, right,
Yeah.
is valuable. Um, there will be a few people that want it that get it by doing heroic instead of by buying heroic instead of
Mm.
buying a mythic kill. But this is I don't know. I like there's in my mind there's multiple upsides. There's a slight downside that you did bring up. Like I say it's slight, but like obviously it matters more to
Yeah.
you. That it does mean that it's not mythic exclusive. It's not something that is only for like earning it by killing the mythic end boss, but with the ability
Yeah.
to sell the mythic end boss, right? It's like not everybody that's running around with jailer mount, right, got it by killing the
Oh yeah.
jailer
Yeah. No,
legit
I
in mythic progression.
yeah, and I guess that's to me like that, like it doesn't bother me when it's mythic only, even if you purchased it, right? Like if you
Yeah,
bought a run like that, because to me, like in my mind, like I know that I put in the work and I got it this way, and like I
yeah,
realize that like that's the thing of it. But when I look at other people, like I will probably like freak out if before I kill Mythic Sarkarath or before Mythic Sarkarath is dead from like a general perspective, like the first 100 kills of it. If I see someone with that mount, I'm gonna freak out. So I'm gonna be like, you did at like you just got lucky. Like you did LFR and you got a mount. Awesome, great, cool. You're worthless. That's
I
kind of
mean
rude.
LFR Suckereth does not open for another 3 weeks,
That's fair. That's
so they
fair.
have to have at least done normal.
Oh.
It's a lot harder than LFR.
That's fair. That's fair. But yeah, so the mount, yeah, I guess wrap it up. Mount is the mythic, potentially would have been mythic only mount is now available as a very low drop chance from every other difficulty, which there's pros and cons. I mean, it ultimately doesn't affect me personally. It's just sort of a mindset thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Anything like that. So cool. A couple of the news items. Number one, this little news item cost me a bet and a bunch of gold to a buddy. There is a portal to the Badlands in Valdrakken.
yeah.
So I originally was like, oh man, how do I get to Oldemon? There's only 3 portals here in the normal spot where portals go. I must have to run. And my buddy was like, oh, there's a portal to the Badlands in Valdrakken. I'm like, no, you're an idiot. No, there's not. Look, I counted them. I was like, come to me. He's like, no, 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 come to me. So in the Obsidian Enclave, which is in sort of the western, like northwesternish part of Valtraken, there's a little room with a portal to the Badlands in it.
Easier way to
Should write them.
easy way to find this. If you go to the Pandaren lady that like um lowers your keystone and gives you a keystone if you didn't do a key last week, all that stuff. And ask her like a guard, like the old guards,
Yeah,
right? Ask her where, like, how do I get to the Badlands? She will mark it on your map.
gotcha. It's okay. I didn't. Should wish I knew that. It's also where you turn in Titan relics. So if you had any like the rep
Okay, yeah,
tokens for what is that? That's Valdraken, right?
yeah. I
Um,
think that's Jack can turn.
yeah. So it's also the turn-ins for that. So yeah, so that was cool that they have an extra portal there for that dungeon. The other dungeons, the other sort of 3 old world dungeons have their portals in the normal spot from last year. So,
Yeah,
or last season, sorry. Um so cool. I guess next up is maybe going back in time a little bit, talking a little bit about classic era. So we sort of saw this last week. There was some data mining that sort of data mined a new hardcore server like designation, right? And so Blizzard, in during an event called the Hardcore All Star Finale Circuit, which I didn't realize was an event, but apparently, like just a little bit of an aside here, it's an event where like teams compete to do like a bunch of dungeons, but on hardcore characters. If any of them die, they basically have to delete it. So it was interesting. Anyway, Blizzard announced basically that they're coming out with official hardcore servers. So it'll be one of the rule sets that you can select and create a character on the realm, level up, and it should be launching later this summer as a timeline they gave. They did give a sort of an interesting couple of interesting tidbits of information. Number one, you only have 1 life, so when your character dies, they die. You can continue to log in, but you'll be permanently a ghost. So you're unable to resurrect. But you can play as a ghost if you want. They're also adding a new dueling mechanic that allows you to duel to the death with someone. They're calling it Magora. What is it? Makara?
yeah.
Makora?
Matt Gara.
Yeah. So that's the command you actually use in game to trigger this. So you can duel to the death, and then these servers will be fresh servers. I guess the last final thing. So there'll be brand new servers. You start at level 1, work your way up. So
I think this is cool.
yeah,
I think this
it's
is cool.
it's super it's funny, like, they had this sort of, like, with the original Season of the Mastery called I think it was called, like, Soul of Iron mechanic, right? Where you
Yeah,
could sort of do it, but, like, if you died, you just got a debuff, and it said, like, you didn't complete it,
yeah.
like, whatever. Um, but no, I mean, with the resurgence of, like, the whole sort of classic hardcore thing, this is sort of fun. Um, I mean, I say I'll maybe create a character, but I might sort of stop leveling my current hardcore character, wait for these, and then sort of like just make it like a long-term goal of like eventually getting to 60
Yeah.
as it. But
We were talking before the podcast. I made a hardcore druid after our podcast last week, and I got to level 12, and then I died through being a little bit too greedy. Turns out crushing blows basically no longer a thing in retail. Mobs that are higher level than you have a chance to get a crushing blow on you, which is like a critical, but not. Uh,
ooh, yeah.
and they do quite a bit of damage. So if you pull a mob that is higher level than you, even if in theory you can kill it, if it doesn't like get crushing blows on you and stuff, um, you could just get crushing blow after crushing blow and just die, which is what happened to me. That is also like in classic tied to your defense skill. So having your defense skill like after you level up, if you haven't really been hit by things, I was playing like low level druid, didn't have any of the forms yet. That was actually what I was getting was my bear form. Um,
Nice.
So I just hadn't been punched by very many things, and so my defense skill was also low. So it was under level and also low defense skill.
Yes.
Got crushed a few times and just died.
Gosh, that's rough. Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
my hunter is what I say. I said it's like level. It's right around the same level, like 13 or 14.
yeah,
Got my pet, and I'm just chilling. I'm just
yeah.
like pet goes in, heal it, just auto shoot it. I think the only thing that has happened, I didn't say this beforehand, but I ran out of ammo. So like all of a sudden I was just like shooting a mob or like trying to kill a mob and like was no longer firing. I'm like, what is going on? So I did like,
Yeah.
and I like my pet was still tanking it luckily. So like I ran into melee it and I was like, oh god. I was in I was in lock mode on across the lake. So I had to like swim all the way back across the lake to town to get some more ammo. And then I
Yeah.
think I actually I logged off. I was like I'm like, I'm done. Can't do this anymore. So
I mean, I think I am genuinely of the opinion that in vanilla, um, the like leveling process is way more fun than the group content. I think is pretty boring. Just
yeah.
I, it's just kind of boring. I don't know.
Yeah. I would agree. I had this funny thing in my mind. Actually, earlier today, I was thinking about like just hardcore servers in general, and I was like, it would be cool, like if I were to like maybe play hardcore a little bit more seriously. I think all I'd want to do is try and level every class to 60. Like
Yeah,
not doing any of the end game stuff, but just
yeah,
get every class to 60 would be like a goal of mine. Um,
yeah.
but yeah,
And I mean, I would love to see some of this stuff from this kind of get translated to retail and like having a hardcore retail server with the like right now it wouldn't make sense because the leveling mobs just aren't tuned in a reasonable way for that to make sense. There's a lot of gimmicky mobs. There's a lot of abilities. I ran into this leveling a mage on uh, Dragonflight PTR after the scaling, right?
hmm
And just ran into things where like you level up as a mage and you gain the ability for your fire blast to spread ignite. And now suddenly, every time you push fire blast, you pull more mobs.
yeah,
As a low level mage, it's very unpleasant.
yeah. No, exactly, exactly. Yeah, the other interesting thing too, so saying this hardcore thing is I was listening to a couple people talk about it, and there are a couple of quests in Classic that require you to die
Yeah,
to actually complete them. So like the major one is like the for what is it? Blackrock Depths has like the Shadow Form or Shadow Forge key,
yeah,
where you have to talk to somebody in the middle of like that area, not in Blackrock Depths, but like in the mountain area, Blackrock Mountain area. You have to talk to an NPC dead to pick up a quest to like get the quest to make that key. Um, so I'm wondering what Blizzard does with like certain things like that. There's also another
maybe
quest. I
you
think
just
it's an
sacrifice
Ungoro.
somebody. You have
Yeah,
somebody sacrifice their character to get the quest to unlock the. Oh, but then you can't complete
you
the
can't
quest.
you can't complete the quest. Yeah, because as soon as you die, like you're dead. So like as soon as you die, you just are permanently a ghost.
Right. So
Oh,
you can pick up the
yeah,
quest, but you can't
but you
complete
can't.
it. You can't get the
You
key, and
can't
you can't give the key to anybody to use.
exactly. So they'll have to change some of that. There's another quest. I think it's an Angora where you have to drink a potion that kills you to like talk to an NPC to move it forward. So
Yeah.
um couple of like weird things like that they'll probably have to figure out and change a little bit. But no, I'm excited to just to mess around with hardcore. So at least in an official sense. Even like the unofficial sense, the ad I don't know if you turned on the ad like
I
the
did turn on
overall
the
death
add-on.
feed.
The death feed
God, it's
is
so
so.
awesome.
Oh man, last night I was playing and I saw back to back somebody's level 31 warrior died, and then
Oh
somebody's
no.
level 28 hunter died, and it's just like, oh man, that's a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, I feel like that, like the to me, if I ever get up this high, but I think the 30 to like 40 range, or even like 30 to 45 range, dying in there is probably the absolute worst because like you're not
Mhm.
close enough to feel like you accomplished anything, but you still put a ton of time in to get there. And you're just like, oh,
Yeah.
like dying at 58, 59, I'd be like, oh, this sucks. I was really close, but like, hey, I made it this far. I did basically everything. But yeah, no, yeah, that's rough. So, um, but cool. I guess we only have about 20 minutes left in the podcast. So we do have a one major topic we haven't talked about, but I guess we can jump into that one, which is Blizzard in I guess Dragonflight fashion, launched the next PTR for 10.1.5
Mhm.
as 10.1 comes out. So they basically did a full sort of media blitz, put out a bunch of information, including an updated roadmap, and their sort of PTR notes for what they wanted to highlight. Along with there has been some data mining, which I have one comment on Mistweaver to just mention as we get to that. But in terms of the roadmap, some big things are coming in 10.1.5. First up, we get our Mega Dungeon. I think it's called Dawn of the Infinite. So that'll be fun. There's an evil chromie in there, I've heard,
Yep.
which is always fun. Um, so we've got new Mega Dungeon, which I guess will follow the typical fashion of being a Mythic only dungeon to start with, and then probably in season 3 we get the Mythic Plus version of that dungeon. I
Right.
would assume. Um, there are a couple new daily areas. So there's new whelp daycare dailies where I guess you can raise a whelpling, which will be fun. There's new dragon riding stuff. So there's a Grand Prix event for dragon riding, I think that's coming in, which will be interesting to see how they do that. Warlocks are getting to be every race, which I don't know if you've seen the current race and class combinations, but like I think there's only 3 classes or 4 classes that can't just be everything.
Yeah. It's pretty
So like
limited.
yeah, so I think eventually we're just gonna see everybody be everything and like that sort of like restriction be
I
done.
and I think I think that's good. Like we've also seen
Oh
that
yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons moved away from this. They're actually Dungeons and Dragons is moving even further away from like just every class to be every race to they're actually also getting rid of like the baked in stat modifiers
Oh,
for a
okay.
race and moving to
Interesting.
like you pick your background and like your background determines the stat modifiers. So like if your background is like a farmer, then maybe you get
Mhm.
strength and constitution versus if your background is like
Ah,
an academic, you get, intellect and negative charisma, you know.
interesting. Nice. Yeah, so warlocks now they get to be everything, which is cool. They also get some pet customization stuff coming in, which I didn't really read
Yeah,
too much into.
I
That's
didn't
on the
either.
roadmap. So,
Uh New
um,
imp stuff it looks like.
yeah. But yeah, so that's sort of maybe the overall. And then there are two, I think, two big things. I don't know, maybe we talk a little bit about dragon riding first, and
Well,
then we
let's
talk
do dragon
about
riding. That's just a
yeah.
fun one. So they're bringing dragon riding to the old world. Um, Not every mount is gonna have dragon riding, but basically a lot of existing dragon mounts are getting dragon riding as an
Hmm.
option. So they are also and this is where we get a little bit into data mining. There are 2 flight styles that have been data mining or data mined. One is called static, which is we think the current like you just press W and you like are basically swimming in the air with your mount. Um,
Hmm.
and then there is the dynamic style, aka Dragonflight. Um, so there's a bunch of old ones, including stuff like the old DK mount uh,
Oh, really?
is on the list. There's basically like if you pick things that use the kind of dragon skeletons, those are the ones that I think are basically on the list. I
Oh,
personally
very
would
cool.
love to see the Dragon Hawks added to this list using some animations kind of similar to the new Slitherkin, whatever it's called, mount
Hmm.
from Zeralite Caverns from 10.1. That would be cool. I really like the Dragon Hawk mounts, so I would like to see those get dragon flying. But I'm happy enough to wait because I was not expecting to get this soon. The whole
Yeah.
world is going to be you can use Dragonflight in it. Outland is unconfirmed, and that is the only place that I would be like concerned about them leaving out of this. Basically, every other expansion content, like I wouldn't see any reason for them to leave.
Yeah. Yeah. Alan, I think it's just a weird set of
Outland is
zones.
janky as hell.
Yeah. Yeah. Just even with current flying, it's weird.
You still can't fly in like Eversong Woods and
Yeah. Yeah.
Ghostlands,
Yeah. There's yeah. Weird stuff like that. But no, yeah. And then I think the other cool thing about this too is also data mined a bunch of new a bunch of achievements that are all around dragon riding races in old Kalimdor and Eastern Kingdom zones.
which is
So it seems
cool.
like they're going all out that they're putting
Yeah,
yeah those races in all the old zones too, which I still love those things. Still
yeah.
super fun.
Like this is super cool. I don't think there's really like they appear to be executing this in a pretty great way where like if you want to use the old style of flying, even if they enable dragon riding for one of your mounts, it appears that you will be able to opt into either
Mhm.
style. There's questions I think still of how, like how do you do that?
Yeah.
Is it a single flag that is for your entire character that is just like all of my mounts are static or all of my mounts are dynamic, or is it per mount? Is it like a thing where I can do like slash mount dynamic or something like
Yeah.
that to do it on a per cast basis? We'll see. Um,
Yeah.
as a part of this, kind of the flip side of it, they are enabling static flying in Dragon Isles zones. So you
Yeah.
can use old mounts with the old style of flying in the new zones. So if that's your thing, now you have it. And that is even just like I think dragon riding is just like so much more fun.
Oh yeah.
There is still like a little bit of an accessibility angle of just like letting people have the old style that is just not very mechanically intensive to use.
Yeah, that or like in many cases, like I won't. I don't know. I don't like using flight points on my characters.
Yeah,
I just like flying places. So like for me, it would be nice if I could like, hey, I gotta fly to this. Like I have to fly to like the feast or the community feast, right?
yeah,
From Valdrakken. So like, can I just point my guy one way, go up and grab a drink, and make sure I come back down and haven't like flown off the mount and
yeah.
or flown off
I
the
mean,
map and died
I
during the
use
game.
flight pass for that. I did that yesterday. Actually, we were going to do Bracket Height Hollow, and I was like,
Yeah,
okay, I'm gonna go grab some water. I'm on the flight path over to Iskara. I'll see you guys in a
gotcha.
minute.
No, I have a thing against using flight points. It's just weird. It's a weird thing for me. But no, yeah, this I mean it's super cool. Like the ability to well, if we can turn off the switches, even if it's on an account by account basis, I'm perfectly fine with that, right?
Yeah,
It'd be better if it was like on a mount by mount basis, in my mind, where like
yeah.
you could have like an old style mount and sort of a
Or
new one. So
like a macro kind of basis where like maybe
yeah.
you can set a default if you drag a mount from your mount journal to your bars, it like uses your default. But
Hmm.
then you can get like special mount commands to be like mount static or mount dynamic or whatever. Be able to do it
Yeah.
and just like kind of pick on the fly which one you want, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that would be cool. But this is, I mean, they said they were going to do this. I would agree. This seems super early. So I don't know if this is truly a 10.15 feature because I don't think they did they mention it's a feature for 10.15 specifically in their
I
notes.
don't think I actually read the preview. Uh,
Uh,
so let me
yeah,
go real quick, skim through the preview.
yeah, no,
Um,
I don't think they did. I think the only thing they mentioned around flying
Oh,
is
it
that.
is.
Oh,
So they mention. Okay, they don't mention dragon riding in old zones specifically, but they mentioned the Kalendor Grand Prix under the dragon riding. So like,
gotcha.
it is 10.15.
Cool. Because yeah, they did make other updates to flying where now your flying training is automatically learned. So you
Yes,
get certain flying, like you get apprentice riding at 10, journeyman riding at 20, expert at 30, and master at 40 without having to spend gold.
and
So,
I think this is good because honestly, like it, the newer expansions where it's just they're designed around you having flying.
mhm,
Um, the cost of the flying training was just nominal. Like it was just
right.
like 50 or 60 gold. But then you're stuck flying around on the super slow mount. It's just like not
Unfun.
yeah, like it just yeah. It's not the thing about being ground bound in vanilla is that and even in TBC because not a lot of people in OG TBC had flying early on.
Mhm,
Um was that there was the gameplay of like figuring out how to get places and like you know actually getting there. Once you have flying and you can just float over everything, that's all gone. So being slow in the air is just like it doesn't serve a gameplay.
yeah, exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
one of the things I am excited about, and this is something where again I would love to see like hardcore retail servers that actually have things tuned to be a fun experience for level. That would honestly
Mhm,
make my day. Dragon riding with that, where Dragonriding recaptures some of that old like groundbound, figuring out like how you get places.
Yeah.
Um, Not so much because like at the point we're at with like once you've unlocked the whole dragon flying tree, it's very easy to just kind of maintain flight indefinitely. But it's at least better than
Yeah.
old flying.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But no, I mean that seems like dragon riding will be here to stay. Like these mount updates and like the old world updates, I think sort of just will push it to be like potentially the default way to fly moving forward.
Yeah.
Um so cool. And then the other final big news from the patch
The
was
biggest news.
the biggest news was that Invoker is getting a third spec. Which I think is the first time we've seen since Druids got a fourth spec, the first time we've seen a class get a spec after launch, right? Like a brand new thing.
And also,
So
this is the first time we've seen one get them in a non-expansion patch.
yeah, like just a
Like
regular old thing.
the Feral Guardian split happened in Cataclysm's release patch.
Mhm.
This is mid-expansion.
Yeah, which makes me wonder if they had this already ready for expansion, but they wanted to see how like preservation played out, right?
I
Or not preservation, but evokers played out.
yeah, I don't know if I would like. I think we had a lot of comments about like Dragonflight, the expansion, maybe not being ready when it was released,
Yeah.
and so I'm kind of like, I don't think this was actually ready, but I think it was planned.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
my thinking is like it was planned, but it was not ready, and so they were like,
Exactly.
they I mean. This is kind of neat. It would be cool to maybe at some point also get like maybe we could get a ranged demon hunter spec. You know, there are
Oh,
ranged
interesting.
demons. A
That is true.
ranged demon hunter, another bow
That is
user
true.
maybe. Um, but so what this spec is, it's called Augmentation Evoker. This is, if you're familiar with Final Fantasy, this is Dancer, but a dragon. And actually, that's a bad analogy, so ignore that. It's a buff spec. You buff people around you, and it is important. It is actually people around you, like physically in the world. It is generally not something where you are picking specific people to give buffs to, like a priest with power infusion, which I think is
Mhm.
good because that generates a lot of bad feels. Um,
Oh, this
but
will too, by the way.
oh yeah, there are some single target buffs, right? As
Yeah.
well. But the whole thing is like you have this like group buff around you. It's like the nearest 5 people or something, nearest 4 people.
Mhm.
And you maintain this buff by doing your rotation, and it amplifies all of their damage. And there's a bunch of other buff spells. There's a buff spell for tanks. There is a buff spell for Devastation Evokers specifically to keep them from dying on pull in Mythic Plus all of the time, which
Mhm.
reduces their. Which is, I think, a concession to threat being a problem, but it's really
Yeah.
stupid that they're fixing it like this.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've definitely not had to like get on people's case multiple times this week about like, please, for the love of God, let me get threat. And it's not like when I'm pulling a single pack, I need time to get threat, but I'm pulling like 3 packs together. I just need you to not do anything while I pull these packs together and like push 3 buttons, and then you can go nuts. Just like
Yeah.
yeah,
Give me a second.
give me a second.
Give me a
Anyway,
second.
back to Augmentation Evoker. New third spec unlocked in 10.1.5. We don't know if there's any like quest line. I don't think yet to unlock them.
Yeah, we don't know anything. I mean, Blizzard gave an overview of the spec, and like you mentioned, right? It's the idea with this is that it's a DPS primarily, so it's not a healing spec, it's a DPS spec. And yeah, you maintain a set of buffs by doing your rotation, and those buffs give buffs to your allies, right? And so I think it's
Yeah,
mostly like the one they've mentioned is like a main stat buff.
yeah.
So basically it's called Ebb
Ebon
and
might.
Might.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so you'll give you give a percentage of your primary stat to as primary stat to the allies around you, right? And so like, and then I think your mastery also increases this buff for Ebb and Might, right? Where it's not just a straight calculation of your primary stat, but it's also affected by mastery. And you do your rotation to extend the buff to keep it up as long as you want. I have mixed feelings about this, and primarily my mixed feelings are this goes one of in my mind this goes one of two ways. It either is a mandatory, not mandatory, but it's a thing you want, much like you want an enhancement shaman with your melee, right? Like Wind
yeah,
Fury is very powerful. That not having enhancement shaman, even having a bad enhancement shaman, is better than having no enhancement shaman for your other four melee classes, right? And I think this potentially turns to that, or it does not do enough damage and it's a liability, right? It specifically doesn't do enough, and its buff are not strong enough to warrant taking them.
Yeah.
And I think getting that tuning right, uh, based on the way evokers have gone, I think this becomes a mandatory thing early on, and I think it
Yeah.
comes down from power from there.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting take. Like I'd like to see how it works because WoW has never seen a class like this. We've never seen a class that like their function is to buff other players, right?
I think if this works, I think if this goes well and people like it, I think that we see some other specs um like Enhancement Shaman kind of move in this direction. Um
Yeah.
but with existing specs they have a challenge where they have to like keep existing players somewhat happy. I don't think they will ever do something like Survival Hunter again, because that was just a catastrophe. It
Yeah.
was just a catastrophe. But I think that they could give Enhancement Shaman some options to like move in this direction if this goes well, which I have my doubts about. Um,
Yeah.
this is definitely not something that appeals to everyone. Our one of our Devastation Evoker, one of our DPS evokers has already said, "I will not play Augmentation. I'm not
Yeah.
interested." Um,
It and it's funny, most of the people in my guild that have expressed interest are healers.
yeah,
Which I think is who this I mean, ultimately, if we think about, like, the mentality to play a healer, like, this type of class, I think, is something that as a healer myself, like, I've wanted a sort of buff class. I wanted a bard class. I just wanna sit in the back and sing some songs and watch my buddies just crush people, like,
yeah,
that's what I wanna do, and so, like, this is sort of, I think, the closest we get to something like that, which
yeah. I think
I honestly think a lot of healers are gonna
healers
gravitate towards something like
and to
this.
some degree tanks. Like
Yeah.
there's kind of like two or three kinds of people that play tank, and some of them are one of the types is the kind of like playing some more supporty role as a
Yeah.
tank. Um, and those people I think will find this appealing
Mhm.
and will want to play this. Um, they did say as well that they are adding stuff to I think the wording they used was combat log hooks, so that things like details can show the contribution of Augmentation Evoker. I think this is kind of a concession to the reality of the way the community functions in WoW now. Like damage
Yeah.
meters are a huge part of the culture, and if you release a class that just permanently is on the bottom of the damage meters and will never, and not only is on the bottom but makes other people's damage higher so they look even worse
Worse, yeah.
than they actually are, I think it would be dead in the water. Like pugs would just not understand the value of it and would not bring one, even if at the high level it was super good. And
Right.
then of course there's the whole Warcraft logs rankings angle. um
Another
no
Wowlet
comment.
post about
I'm no
DPS
comment.
rankings.
No comment.
I mean, it is what it is, right? Like I think in general, the way WoW the WoW community views the game through the lens of any sort of like statistical graph, right? Like I
Yeah,
use the term statistical in quotation marks, but it's any sort of like, hey, look at the log data. This is good. Hey, look at the log data. This
yeah,
is bad, right? And right, wrong, or indifferent, right?
yeah,
I think it's just a simplified way
yeah.
of doing it. I mean, like
You are
you look at
right. I think you're right. Yeah,
yeah. Like even like something like sub creation where you get like the letter grade for every class, which
yeah,
is literally it's a that website is a popularity contest in
yeah,
my mind. Like
yeah,
the way they do their statistics, it's like if you have enough people to play enough keys or enough raids, right, then you are ranked higher regardless if your performance is
yeah,
actually higher. But anyway, I think that you're right. Like they need like Blizzard needs to do this or this class like just looks bad to the
yeah,
overall community, which
yeah,
means less people play it, right? Um, but
yeah,
no, I'm excited. I mean, I think like my evoker is not level 70 yet because I honestly didn't enjoy leveling it, but
I
I
made
think I
a.
might actually get it to 70. So
I have a level 60 evoker that I made. That I just used the random name generator for the name, and it's got a god awful name. That I needed when we were working on talent stuff. Um,
yeah.
I needed to test evoker talents, so I just made an evoker, and it turns out that you have to do the entire starting zone to unlock the talent tree.
Oh
So
man.
I just like spent 2 hours going through this starting zone
Nice.
in order to
Nice.
unlock talents to test this. But yeah, um, I don't know. This is going to be interesting. It is going to
Yeah.
be interesting if they execute it well. It could be kind of like great for the people that want it. Um, it could also be a disaster, and we will see. Um,
Yeah.
we will see. One thing I will note as well, Augmentation Evoker currently has a bunch of absorbs. I don't know if that will stick around. They're
Yeah.
currently like a little bit. They do a lot of like they have the buffs for other people, but those buffs also like generate shields, and so those
Yeah.
shields are kind of a big deal. Um, like Devastation Evoker has Zephyr right now, which gives people shields. But this is on the like Zephyr writ large, like all the time. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know that those will stick around or that if there will be anything noteworthy in terms of actual HPS, but right now on PTR they are. So,
Yeah.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, I guess that's one final note. PTR is up. You can go and make an Augmentation Evoker and try it out. The Megadungeon is not open, but I believe you can do Dragonriding in the old zones as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so
yeah,
definitely go test it out. I need to find some time to get on PTR and play around because maybe I have a new main. We'll see.
the end of Healer Anomaly. Is this it?
Yeah, we'll see. If it guarantees me a raid slot, heck yeah. So
But yeah, I think that is it for the show today. Quick check on the race. Uh, no real motion. Echo went from a best of 55% to a best of 53%. So a little bit
slowly.
farther. Liquid is actually pulling the boss again.
Nice.
But yeah, I think that is going to be it for the show today. Thank you all for watching and or listening. And if you enjoyed this podcast and you want to support it and the other work that we do over on the Peak of Serenity, you can do that at our Patreon at patreon.com/Peak of Serenity. And of course, come and join the Discord. It is the best place. Come and talk about how you are abandoning Mistweaver to play Augmentation.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um, that is it for the show today. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week.
Bye.